at today's world, now everyone's talking about AI. But you're sitting over here like, hey, hello. I've been talking about this for the last 20 years.
I'm sure somebody else also thought of the idea. But it's a question that I'm waiting on.
Hi Rahul, good to meet you. How are you doing?
Very good, Rohan. Thank you for calling me here.
Thank you so much for actually coming and taking out the time out of your busy schedule to have a word with us. Like I had briefed you over the phone earlier as well. So we are starting something called EMBytes, which is your featuring on the third episode, and this is the first offline episode that we're having. So we're very, very happy to have you here, and the entire reason for this podcast is to understand a little bit behind the faces that we see available on the public world, to get a little bit of understanding about what actually goes behind the scenes, what is the kind of decisions that go through your head on a daily basis, and of course the kind of people who are going to be viewing it are will be young folks, startup founders, entrepreneurs, people who are interested in to understand a little bit of the tech space as well. So that's a little bit about EMBytes, and how the podcast is going to go is we're going to ask you a series of different questions across your career span and of course your personal experiences, and then towards the end we move into this or that round, which is our version and our take on a rapid fire.
Sure.
And to end the podcast, of course, any last notes that you have. So that's going to be the agenda of how we'll take this podcast forward. So thank you once again, and it's a real pleasure to have you here. For the rest of the folks, I've actually met Rahul about I think three and a half years back. Back when Expand My Business was a much smaller company, and we were at that time just exploring technology. AI was not a buzzword at that time, and and Rahul, I think you just invested maybe in like 2-3 companies at that time. But yeah, I'm very, very honored and very happy to have you here, and
Excited to be here. I've enjoyed seeing your journey and Expand My Business, and happy to be here and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. So on that note, let's begin. Rahul, of course, first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so that, the entire audience has a general idea of who you are, a little bit about your company, etc., before I move on to the more detailed questions.
Sure. So, I'm first on, right? Now, today, however, I've become a venture capitalist. Right? Done a few startups, mostly around technology and data, being the common themes across all the startups I've done. The first startup I did was a company called Matrix, which was straight out of business school. In fact, I chucked my day one job, which was a dream job actually with GE, and went and joined Matrix, which turned out to be a great decision. Of course, nobody at that time understood what I was doing. Like when I told my parents I'm joining this company called Matrix, which is a internet mein kuch. So they were like, internet mein kuch karta hai. That was the line. Anyway, so that's where my journey started. Sold that in 2001. So saw the entire boom, bust, all that happened. Then I did a KPO. Sold that in 2022. Then I went to Japan, where I spent a long period building a big data business. And that really has shaped what I'm doing today, right? Because if you know Japanese, it has no spaces in between words. So to figure out what are the words in a sentence is a non-trivial problem. And actually, when I go back to 2005, technology wasn't solving it very well. We had 50% accuracy with the state of the art, which was dictionary express rules. Kind of didn't work. So then we experimented. We got a great engineer who worked with us, and we experimented with pattern-based technologies, which is what the entire basis for modern AI is. And we got 80% accuracy on the basis of that. We got business from Toyota, Honda, Canon. And we beat people like SAP, IBM, Oracle to get those orders, which was really gratifying, right? And of course, the business grew, success happened, all that happened. I got a nice exit in 2016. So once I had sold the business and I had some capital, then I said, okay, what should I do? That's when I started investing in AI startups. And that's what led to me becoming now a full-time investor, running Sensei Ventures.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction. So you founded Sensei in 2019, of course, with the vision of investing in AI-centric startups, and you have a vast experience. Clearly, like you mentioned, made money, sold companies. You have really explored through different various stages in your life. And at today's world, now everyone's talking about AI. but you're sitting over here like, hey, hello. I've been talking about this for the last 20 years. But, what motivated you to choose AI as your focus on the outset, right? Because, like you said, I was aware of this before speaking to you that, you had certain limitations behind reading the Japanese text with regard to the spacing and just the kind of accuracy of it, right? So, would love to hear the story a little bit behind, why you chose to kind of go down that model and, kind of started to, what was your overarching vision behind starting Sensei then after that?
So, for me, the future matters a lot, right? In the end, I'm an optimist and I'm a guy who looks at what comes next, right? And the answer to that question kind of became clear to me, when we were doing, this is a company called Smart Insight in Japan, which built a big data analytics business. So when you have tons of data, so we started with actually the problem of breaking Japanese text into words and using AI for that. But we expanded that, right? I mean, we were doing analytics. So when you have vast amounts of data, again, AI shines. So building machine learning models. There's not like deep learning that we have today, but it was machine learning. And all of that got us a lot of revenue. See, in the end, and I say this as both as an entrepreneur and as a VC, what matters is revenue, right? It is the one undeniable proof you have that what you are selling is valuable, right?
Correct.
So that was the clear driver, that signal which is very hard, you can't miss it, right? So got that. And then the question was only about figuring out where all does AI apply, right? And to become a venture capitalist, also the question I had to ask myself is, can I be a venture capitalist, right? I've been an entrepreneur all my life, right? So I'm now go back to 2019. So actually 2017 is when I made my first investment. So if you go back there, the idea was, okay, I made some money. And I didn't get where I got without help. Ron, I'm just being honest with you. There are enough people, investors to individuals, other founders who helped me. And I said, okay, I think I can do that now to other people. And that was actually the first step into this world. So I joined Indian Angel Network and invested in a couple of companies as part of the Indian Angel Network team. And that worked out really well. And that's when friends started asking, kya kar raha hai? What are you doing? You seem to be doing well. So can we join you? And that's what led to Sensei. It wasn't like a little bit of serendipity always took part. But why I chose AI was, it looked like the future. See, and I'll just say this, that, and I mean, it's worked out for me. I don't know whether it'll work out for everybody, but if I believe in something, I back myself, right? So out of business school also, when I had to take the bet on the internet and chuck a great job with GE, who were planning to send me to the US to be part of the FMP program, which is highly valued program, all of that, I did, because part credit goes to my first boss. She was a lady called Kya Sarkar, who actually had read a paper of mine.
Okay.
And she had given me first prize for it. And when I was thinking whether I should join her or not, she said, come and do what you've written.
Okay.
Because I'd written about the internet, right? And that is the line which kind of swung the balance, right? Because how can I not do what I've said is the future? Right? I'd already written that. It's on a piece of paper. So okay, let's go do that. And that turned out to work well, right? So when the AI thing came around, I had seen how it worked. I mean, I won't say I'm an engineer who can build, but I'm a data guy, so I understand and data plays a huge portion in this world. So that helped me see the value it does. Because data is actually, when you have vast quantities of data, it's very hard to deal, right? I mean, we're talking Toyota scale, Honda scale. This is as large as it gets. And we saw how AI just helped us consume that data and deliver value out of it. So that conviction was very easy. Once you get there, when you talk about the promise of big data, it was always about give you the best analysis and like take all your data, different. So the 3 V's of big data were volume, velocity, and variety, right? Of these, actually, we never tackled variety. Actually, variety is only something which we are attempting now all these multimodal AI models, that's when we are tackling. Earlier, we could just deal with numbers, databases. That's fundamentally most of history if you look at it. You take out the current generation of AI. That's what we've done.
Okay.
All of computers, all of databases. That's all that is inside there. And seeing that AI can actually handle the variety problem. So it's not just big data. Without AI, the big data promise is not delivered. So to me, that's what we delivered. We saw that happen. And then when you take that and you expand that and think where all it can apply, I could apply it to every problem I was thinking about. And said, okay, then let's get into it. So now the only question left was founder or entrepreneur. And to my mind, the key problem with AI is building it is not easy, right? So you have to truly understand the tech from inside. I mean, I understand it pretty well, but I don't understand it as well as the founders I've invested in. They are a cut above me, by a distance, right? That's the kind of guys I want to back. I mean, when I asked myself, would I fund myself? So I built a framework, how to analyze with startups to invest in. I did not pass my own framework. So I said, then the decision became much simpler. Come, let's become an investor.
Let's help those guys.
Right.
No, I think, one thing that you touched upon, in fact, one of my own personal mentors who has been guiding us since, day one at Expand My Business. So he's in the technology procurement space, right? And he keeps telling me one thing continuously. He's like, Rohan, IoT वगैरह जो है ना, this has been there for years and years, right? This is that, okay, now it's become a lot smarter. But back then also I was doing, okay, maybe my distance was not, from maybe sitting out of Gujarat or sitting out of Pune, I'm able to switch on my light in Delhi, right? But 10 feet distance, 20 feet distance, 30 feet distance, that was all possible back then as well. So I think these technologies that have come have been around for a long time. It's just that maybe people are slowly realizing the use case of it now and how to kind of modify it and make it a lot better. And I think that's what has been a very good emergence of, the new kind of emerging technologies that are coming into play. So interesting to hear that. And, that's an automatic segue to my next question as well, So you have experienced over, 30 years of, your professional experience across various different companies, right? You started off at, Matrix. You saw the .com, the .com bubble burst in front of your eyes. You started your own company. In the content and media space, in the edtech space, you've played as a role as a financial, in the financial role as well in another company. So you've really kind of, been there, done that for various different industries. So it's not only is it a very illustrious list of what you have achieved and what you have done in your career, but what are questions or what questions I want to ask you? What are some common frameworks that you perhaps use on a day-to-day basis, or what are some common decision-making matrices that you use to evaluate whether you're funding in a company, whether you want to start a certain company, whether you're looking at a certain division of a certain company, and how has that kind of helped you shape your career going forward as well? Because I think this is a common advice that a lot of people come and ask me, a lot of people I'm sure have asked you as well. But what exactly is that overarching, the decision-making mindset that you use, and if you could kind of touch upon how you applied it across your
Sure. So I'm it's almost not easy to understand your own decision-making matrix, right? But anyway, so some of the key things. So if I look back at the key decisions, one is that I've always preferred transformation or disruption over incremental improvement, right? The people who are good at that. It's a question of understanding yourself and choosing that which you are good at. I enjoy the creation process. So which is why it's also partly I'm a early stage VC. Why? Because I get part of the joy of creation, right? So one is to figure out what are you good at and then look for those things that excite you and which you do well. Because one thing I keep telling people is I have never worked a day in my life. Literally. I enjoy doing what I do, and it's been true for my entire career. And that's a great thing because, when you go for me, going for a holiday is like, okay, change your scene, right? It's not like, of course, work can sometimes get very stressful, especially when you're a founder. All of that happens. Yeah. And so you need stress relief. So it's like that, but it's not like I'm taking a holiday because I'm tired of work. I love my work. So that's some of the frameworks I use to choose what I do and what to pursue. Right? Second thing, I think what matters a lot to me is, and this is something which has changed, right? If you went back and asked the younger me, I would have talked to you about ideas, and ideas matter, creativity, that transformation piece is there. But what do you realize over time as you get gray hair is that execution matters far more than ideas, right? I'm sure somebody else also thought of the iPhone, right? But it's a question of the guy who built the iPhone. Much true of almost everything you see. It's not about the ideas. It's about the guy who builds it, who executes it. And that's what we look for in founders. And that's what I asked myself, what will I be able to execute? So stayed away from AI simply because I don't think I can execute AI. Right? Look for execution skills. And if you think about what you can execute well, pick those up because then you'll do well. And then it'll never be work, because if you do something well, it usually isn't work.
Yeah, I think that's a mindset that I personally like to bring into work every day, and I think it also allows me to look at different people in the company that as well. It's not, of course, you said a lot of things around the fact that you have to actually back your own decisions because, just recently I was speaking with Nishant, right? And he was telling me about the fact that, the pessimist always actually sounds the smarter one.
Yeah.
Because, they back it up with, isliye nahi hoga, aise karenge, things like that. But it's that optimist in the room that actually builds it out and is, like you're saying, is the guy who created the iPhone, is the guy who created these various different companies that we see around ourselves on a daily basis today. So I think that's it's something that's very important, and it frankly allows me also to judge when I look at people and see who can I fit into what portion of the company, what are they good at, so that work should not seem like work. It should seem exciting. I'm coming to work to do something exciting on a daily basis. But no, I think that's a very good answer. But my question around it's. You mentioned a lot of times previously in the past as well that, and you touched upon it as well right now, that you are not the best person to, let's say, sit down and build these things out. But yes, you do have a very good, vast knowledge, on how things need to get done, right? So, you often mention that you play the role of a sensei, right? I think you're a sensei, in the name as well. But you play the role of a sensei, which is, for people who don't know, it's the translation of Japanese to, I guess, a mentor or someone like
a teacher
or coach, right? So you play the role of a sensei for a lot of these founders and companies that you invest in. And what I found interesting was that you have these players, right? You're the coach. The players are the ones who are very good in their positions, right? In what they do, they are good skill set. But you are bringing in that overarching experience of, hey, listen, I know what different industries look like. I know where it can be potentially used, what you can do about it, right? I won't teach you how to sit down and code because you're better than me at that, but I'll tell you how to kind of go forward with it, right? So given today's markets and, how VCs invest, because of course AI is a buzzword and, people are excited to invest into the space. So a lot of focus being put into AI companies. What do you think differentiates your inputs as compared to, another VC who is out there with maybe 10 times more capital than you, but is also investing in AI companies? So what do you think differentiates your input as compared to theirs?
So I'll tell you what we do and why we do it well, right? Firstly, we do early stage, right? Early stage is a lot about building all the pieces you need to build a business, right? Whether getting your product right, figuring out who really your customer is, what the pricing should be, what the go-to-market should be. All these are the key decisions which will shape the kind of structure that gets built on top. So you put the foundations in place. At the foundational stage, getting some of these largely right. See, you don't have to get anything perfectly right. You will attain perfection. Don't aim for perfection on day one. But getting it largely right, in the right ballpark, helps you take off, right? It helps you get your initial traction and validate all your hypotheses. So that to me is not how a lot of other people might think. The excitement, see, at different stages, different problems become. As you become later in the business, scale is the key issue, right? For us, it is getting the first 10 customers. So that mindset is different, right? I need to establish the cookie. So what you want is something which is replicable, right? But you don't know that day one. On day zero, you don't know what will be. You can, of course, define something that would be replicable. But is that the right one? You don't know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get to what will be replicable?
Mm-hmm.
And that path we've traversed with us. I've done it in my own life, and I've done it with enough founders now. So that to me is a great value add at the stage level. We understand our stage well. We know how to guide companies there. The second, when it comes to the AI piece that you're asking, see, what is the difference between an AI startup and any other startup today? Everybody uses tech, right? But one, this technology is changing rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
Two, we really don't still understand all the things we need to about it, right? What are its repercussions? What are its constraints, challenges, how to solve those challenges? So there is still a lot of R&D left here, right? We are in the build phase. We are not in the extract phase, right? We are yet to establish what all can be done with AI and do those things, not improve upon what has already been done. So we are not in the improvement phase. We are still building out. And this requires you to understand what the technology's constraints and its strengths are, right? If you go back and look at e-commerce, almost every e-commerce site, search used to run on a database, right? That was one of the things we helped change in Japan, for example, right? That you use a search engine, which is not in tables, not in neat rows and columns, right? Because you don't need that for search. Search is a write once, read many times problem, right?
Yeah.
So understanding the fundamental at a technology level, there's a fundamental difference between search and database, right? And one works well for something and the other doesn't. Now,
interesting.
So you need to go into the technology deeply to really be able to fund the right set of companies, right? So if when a founders come to us, we work with them. We understand the technology. We one, read on it. Two, because we meet so many founders, they educate us. So our knowledge is largely current as to every topic around AI goes. And we've seen what are the problems different companies faced when they took X technology. Like Transformers requires lots of data. So we know that, and we know what kind of data it takes. So having that knowledge helps us pick the right founders, because we know the guys who are talking the .ai is a label, right? Because there will be a lot of that. And where the .ai is real, right? So being able to sniff out what is real. To figure out, in the end, we don't invest for today. Let's say you're a great founder. You build a great piece of technology. You come and show me the technology. Great AI product you build. Question is not what it is built, what you build today, right? Because you've been maybe in the journey for 3 to 6 months. But your journey is 6 years, 10 years, right? We are going to be with you for the next 5, 7 years at least. So you are at the very 10% less, 5%, 1% of your journey. How does it matter what you've done now? It's a question of what you're going to do for the rest of the journey, which means I'm looking at your capability. To understand your capability, I have to understand your choices. It's not, I cannot just judge the item you built. How did you take the decisions that led to this? To be able to see your decisions, I need to understand technology. I can't just, if you only look at output, which any VC can. Any VC can look at something and say, oh, this works, this looks good, this has potential. Yeah, of course. But does this business have potential depends on where is it going to be in 3 years or 5 years time. Where can this guy take it?
So, as just a follow-up, I found an interesting point. You said, Ken, you are a good early stage investor.
Yes.
Because you focus on the fundamentals of, how is it, there are so many interesting ideas that we see, right? And I think another question that I want to ask, which is coming up as well, was that in the last 2 years, I think you've seen an exponential growth in the type of .xyz.ai companies that have come to you, right? Whereas earlier it was not the case. So, there's so many guys who are solving for one particular use case, many companies that are existing for that as well, right? So, considering that, you have a certain thesis in terms of that you are you would call yourself the best, maybe early stage AI fund, right? Because you've seen it all, you've done it all. Do you feel that your inputs would maybe be up till a certain stage of the company, or do you feel like you can add value across from, let's say, his day one to, let's say, the day that this founder becomes or the company becomes like a $500 million valuation, $1 billion, etc., etc. Do you feel like that's something that would limit you?
So the value will change. Our value is greatest at the early stage. However, one thing you must understand is that in the end, we deal with people. Entrepreneurs need help at a fundamental level, right? It's a lonely journey. They're still at the top of organization. And it only gets lonelier the bigger the company gets. We've seen him, we understand him or her from the very beginning. We understand the concerns, their shortcomings, what they're really good at, what might be potential blind spots. We've seen them make mistakes. We've seen them do things, hit the ball out of the park. So that knowledge about the founder itself is something which is very hard to replace. We'll always have that best knowledge because we've known them the longest. Right? So that role of being a personal friend, mentor remains, right? It really doesn't matter the stage of the company. However, think of venture capital like a relay, right? Long relay. We are the first runner we are running the first line. I am going to hand over the baton to the next lead investor who will take the company and then hand over that investor will also hand it over to the next investor. Right. So that's how you get from seed to A to B to C. So if you start thinking of it like that, but the only difference I'd say from the relay is we still stay involved. Right? And that plays we will stay involved to a certain extent. At some point, we will, of course, exit. But till that time, we always are there. And actually, even after exit, it's not that founders don't talk to us.
Yeah.
There's issues that they might be having with the existing investor, or they may be wrestling with a choice where they just want an independent view from a person they trust. Right?
Yeah, I think
so. You become a trusted partner, so that stays.
I'm glad that you touched upon that, because playing that role of a mentor, and often, in my early days of, starting the company as well, I felt that ठीक है मैं सब कुछ कर लूँगा मैं, right? But slowly I started realizing that hey, I'm struggling, and I need to kind of ask. It's not a bad thing to go and reach out to people and ask them for help, right? I mean, you reach out 100 to one person might help you. And I think that's something that has also flourished in terms of the relations that we have with our investors as well. Today, we have Chirati, we have Tanglin, we have DST Global, we have Alpha Wave, right? These are the four major investors in the company. And they're not just people who come and tell us, hey, listen, this is what you have to do, this is how we need to do it, right? But they're just a kind of a ear to fall upon, right? I can call them, I can tell them, they support, they have that patience to help. Hey, listen, bro, chill out. Don't worry, right? So I think that's an underappreciated value that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about when they talk about the VC world. But I'm glad that you did bring it up, because it's a point that I really, I would want to hear from a lot of people such in your position. Coming to, you had mentioned a lot about big data, organization data, unstructured data, which I think is a problem that a lot of AI companies are solving, or trying to solve at least. And in today's information, you've alluded to the past that data is, of course, the new oil. Right, the next company big is not going to be the big oil giant. It's going to be someone who has the most data, and we can, I think, see it happening in front of us, right? With NVIDIA, with OpenAI, Microsoft. With these guys are slowly becoming the giants, and I think for the next 10, 20 years, I don't foresee any change in that. To be very frank with you, but simply possessing data just is not enough.
Absolutely,
right? It's about it's the ability to identify what are the perhaps the most valuable data points, transform them into actionable insights that eventually define the difference between a successful venture, a successful company, and a company that maybe has not made it that big, right? So how do you look at this entire, what are the kind of data points, or what are the kind of analysis that you make on these data points while making investment decisions for companies that Sensei is investing in today?
Sure, lovely question. Yeah. So one, as I said before, data is a common theme across my entire life's journey, right? Matrix, we used to supply data and content to all the large portals. The KPO was working on data for foreign companies, then big data analytics, and of course now investing in AI. So to me, data has always been actually a problem. Okay, if you had a lot of data, there's a cost of storage, cost of everything. It seemed like data is a problem, and data invariably is dirty. It doesn't matter how well you think of your things. Data has this unique ability, like a white pant, to get dirty, right? So people would always struggle with it. Yeah. Everybody thought, data should give me value. But if you go back and look at history, it's been a lot of cost. Now data is just this switch has flipped. It's very clearly an asset. And it's an asset which is yielding results today and that will only grow further and further. I mean, I'm excited about the fact that other thing I love to say is that people create data. I mean, we can talk IoT, you can talk whatever you want. In the end, it's people. Data, knowledge, information, all people. And because India has the most people, we have a great data ability, and thankfully we've got all these things around, the India stack, all the things that are happening, mobile phone penetration, which lead to the data becoming digital, and then thus we'll find use for that data. So to me, that's a massive, exciting trend which has switched switch has flipped, and we are on the right path. The other aspect to data is when you look at it from a large company lens, data security also becomes a challenge, right? So when you start analyzing startups, you have to keep this in mind, right? So data quality and data security. I mean, when I say security here, actually, I'm partially also referring to the fact, have you got your data in the right manner? Because otherwise you're open to copyright infringement, all those. And 3 is the right data, right? Is it relevant to the problem you're solving, right? You can have a lot of data. Like, if you crawl the internet, you won't get much data about what's happening within SenseAI, right? About our investments, actually how those companies are doing. So that, what I'm trying to express is that every data is not equal. And what is valuable to you is different from what's valuable to me. And actually data only has value in use. So when we look at a startup, we look at the data piece. We have a framework called VDAT, where V stands for variety, D for data, A for algorithm, and T for T, right? The D piece it's a 2x2 matrix. So it's a very important piece we look at for every startup. And I just like to add here that a lot of founders, of course, if you're a startup founder, you don't have much data. Unfortunately, you just started out, right? So you may not have a lot of data. And then for an AI company, then it becomes a struggle to say, first build data, then build a model, then build AI. I mean, there's so many steps, it seems, so hard. But all successful founders, all the founders we funded have been able to solve this conundrum, right? And if you're a smart AI founder, it's one of the things we expect you to solve, because without solving the data problem, you will never be able to build good AI. It just won't happen. The key difference, I mean, you spoke about some of the companies that have become big in the world, so you did not mention Google, but Google also.
Of course, yeah.
And that data advantage you will see play out in so many fields. And then the question is, take social, what is the data today in the world, which most people think about is, one is social media data, which the FBs, Metas of the world have. Then you have all the web data where Google seems to have a lead there. And of course, most of this data is public, so you can go crawl it. And then it leads to all kinds of other privacy issues and things like that. So this is what the data looks like. But there's so much data which people are not talking about. All the data within enterprises is not available publicly. What about that data? That data has to play a role, and AI has to see that data, and models will get built on that, and that's where a lot of money will be made. You can't just take today's concept of AI or Gen AI, to make it more specific, is a large language model like GPT-4, GPT-4o, whichever one Anthropic, Cloud. The point I'm making is, to me, it's too too narrow a point of view. See, no human being knows everything. Now this LLM that you're building, this mother of all LLMs, it is one LLM that can answer any question in the world. Why are we even trying to do that? Why do we need that? Right? If you look at it from the discovery problem, which is what search solves, yes, knowing everything, one place to be able to find everything is valuable. But that doesn't translate to almost anything else. This use case, yes. But if you want to solve a problem, so in medicine you have a general practitioner. But if you need a surgery, you want a surgeon who specializes in your area, right?
Correct.
If you have a heart problem, you want first a cardiologist and then a heart surgeon, not a lung surgeon or a knee surgeon, right? He's not going to operate on your heart. So the point I'm making is that expertise is usually requires depth, and LLMs by definition are going for width. So there is something wrong with this picture. It cannot be. I think people are missing the boat when it comes to some of the. When you start thinking about it, a larger context, you draw it out. You can't see LLM solving all our problems. No way. So I want to see that point of view also, right? What data are we talking about? So that right data question, which I placed in the beginning, I want to see that answer.
That's actually very, very helpful because, I think you've given us a lot of key insights as to, what you kind of look at today and how you look at companies. And I probably look at this as an unfair advantage as well, not just for AI companies actually. I would put this across all companies because if a company does not understand their own data, if they're not able to structure it from day one, which a lot of, I guess, first-time founders maybe make a mistake on, I think it's like you're bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? There are, when you talk about second-time founders, they know what they need to do on day one. Yeah, their problem might be different in terms of the problem statement that they're solving. That's, of course, something that's new in different scenarios. But I think, personally speaking as well, that had I had that ability to know that, hey, listen, 5 years later or 2 years later, okay, let's not even talk about 5, but 2 years later, this is the kind of data that I would need for my own company. And hey, let me build it out from day one. I think that's something that would help not just any AI company, but it would, of course, help any company that's potentially any service as well. But no, I think thank you for that. That's a very interesting.
No, I'm going to react to something you said because it's a topic close to our heart.
Okay.
So I basically think you should learn to walk before you can run. Okay?
100%.
There's sequence to learning.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is while it seems like the second-time founder will have a lot of advantage because he'll start off with prior knowledge of failure points, what's required at a later point. How many of the top 10 founders you can name are second-time founders?
Agreed. I think that...
almost all the best founders are first-time founders, right?
True.
So it's even within the VC community, it's very popular to seen as, I backed a second-time founder. Seemed to be a good thing. I don't know why. I'm happy for funding first-time founders. I
think sometimes it might handicap the ability to make the risk-taking decision. I feel like had I not made those mistakes, the things that had gone right also might not have gone right because I may be focused on something that I don't actually be focused on. Let me solve the problem first. ठीक है वो सब बाद में figure out कर लेंगे. That's what I hear commonly from a lot of founders. बाद में देख लेंगे, figure out कर लेंगे. But I think once you reach a certain stage of the company, वो बाद में वाला line I think becomes a little bit.
So of course I get what you're trying to say, right? But the point I was trying to make to you, and I think you get it, is that, for example, a consultant will know all the answers to all the questions, right? Don't make the best entrepreneurs.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay,
yeah.
So don't go with that. That's what I'm trying to say. Take that out of the picture. Issue will be what are the priority. If you were to start today, there's a certain technology landscape, certain data landscape, certain competitor landscape. In this situation, how should you start? And that being able to get your decisioning right on this is what is important, more than anything else.
Agreed. And I think that's an automatic segue to my next question. Is that this is a little bit more personal, maybe on the lighter side of things. So as we know, AI is rapidly transforming various industries. You touched upon certain industries right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes causing disruption and sometimes even causing some fear as well, right? But while some sectors are readily embracing AI, like for example, when we talk about the fintech, it's revolutionizing fraud detection, it's revolutionizing algorithmic trading, right? Similarly, healthcare. In fact, in my previous podcast, I had spoken with Tushar Bain, part of Alpha Waves, and he told me something very interesting. He's saying that, I think he was talking about knee replacement surgeries, about 30% of them being done just via machine and via technology. So emerging technology is something that's very exciting. So even in healthcare, it's making waves in medical imaging analysis, your gene splitting, DNA splitting, etc. So is there a specific area? Again, a personal question. It doesn't have to be a sense AI thesis question, but just a personal question. But is there a specific area within your chosen industry where you see AI making groundbreaking contribution or some significance that you are personally very excited about? Is there one particular?
No, absolutely. And actually, it's right where you're talking about is in the medical field, right? I think personally that I will lead a long and healthier life, but for sure the generation after me will. AI will change our health span significantly. And I'll just give you in 2 minutes why I think so. So fundamentally, AI has already solved some of the long-standing problems, like protein folding was a problem which we for years couldn't understand. We did not know the structures of proteins, and physical structures matter when you talk about interaction, because in the body, things have to match with each other to interact, so shapes matter, right? We didn't know the shapes of our proteins. Now we know the shapes of almost all our proteins. Google's AlphaFold has put it out there. And that's just one. I mean, the amount of progress we made on DNA side, right? We can actually analyze DNA, we can print DNA. So we can actually design new organisms, because DNA is in the end just letters, and if you lay them out right, you can create a new organism. So we can do all these things. Now and what does this mean is that DNA is programmable, right? I mean, it's now software. Instead of zeros and ones, it's a different set of letters. That's all it is, right? So you take all this together, what you're fundamentally seeing is will be a burst of innovation, AI-powered innovation in biology. And why do I use the word biology is important as well, which is actually most of medicine, almost all of medicine, except for all the vaccines we've had, is fundamentally chemistry and not biology, right? That's because we don't really understand A, how things exactly work, and B, how to manipulate them at a biological level. It's mostly about this medicine will disrupt this thing and this will happen and this will be the reaction. So kind of it's treatment in that format. We now have the ability to actually design new organisms, to make changes. We can go, if a child has the wrong kind of DNA where it will end up with a life-threatening disease really early on, you can fix that. Genetic mutations, all those kind of issues can be handled. So honestly, this entire world is just starting. How much of that will happen in India, how much I'll be able to fund. I would love to be able to do it. I'm excited. I'm totally excited about it. It's going to change our lives. We will lead all longer, healthier lives than we do today.
Exciting times coming ahead. It's a pretty bold statement where you say, AI is kind of taking over. But fair enough. I think, just one question I had, which I would like to ask someone with grey hair, like you mentioned, because you've seen there, been there, done that, right? So, the rise of AI-powered, hyper-personalization, it promises to revolutionize customer experiences.
Yeah.
Right? And, it offers different products, services that are tailored, of course, with the help of data, etc. It tailors according to what your inputs and what kind of output you're expecting on as well. So, the problem is that today when we ask young people, they might not have the kind of knowledge to comment on this, but, a question I'm interested to ask you is that this level of personalization, right, it means that there are certain potential privacy concerns. There are certain concerns around the ethicality of what it is doing and what it is not doing, right? So, whereas we can leverage the power of AI for personalization, which is good in today's world, it simultaneously also talks a little bit about the kind of concerns that we have. So how do you look at this entire piece? Because I think that's something that is just going to grow bigger and bigger, because, today we're talking about technology, but tomorrow when the technology is built, like I said, once we're out of that build phase, then people will need a new thing to comment on. So I think it's going to be, data privacy. So what's your take on that?
So my two bits on this so it's a great question. I mean, this entire dichotomy between privacy and personalization is real, right? But it's one first thing I want you to understand. The privacy concern has nothing to do with personalization at one level, because the data for personalization is already with the large companies. Google knows far more about you than you can even dream. So does Meta. So do these large companies already have, right? So it's a question of whether they turn on the technology which uses that data to give you personalization. So from that perspective, the privacy problem is already out there. It's
correct.
Now look at next in future. What more private data can go out and how does that affect? So you have to put privacy into a separate box. And if then you design this properly, you don't need a centralized service to do personalization. I can have my AI assistant who does personalization for me, but who stores its data within me, within my devices. It doesn't have to go sit on the cloud. It doesn't have to sit on Google servers for personalization to be done for you.
Correct.
So the architectures themselves have to evolve, right? And this will be a push which will happen in three ways, right? One is, of course, governments will push for it, right? Privacy concerns are large and data leaks are real, right? And people's private data is leaked, health data, all kinds of data is being leaked today. And it's unacceptable, right? So that creates its own. You're also seeing that nations want to have their citizens' data to be within their physical boundaries. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but that's another piece. And then there's the final piece, which is consumers are also getting irritated, right? I mean, while they've made the choice to consume services where they are the product, right? Because they're getting all this great stuff for free.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have to pay for it in some way, which they pay through their personal data, their loss of privacy. So that equation at some point will be something which bothers enough people, so they ask for a change. So change will happen because of external factors. And lastly, because companies realize, honestly, before this, we did not have any other way to do it, right? You needed the centralized database. It would only work in that way. But as AI becomes smarter, you have federated learning, you have small language models, which can actually, your phones have become so much smarter that you can run a model on them. The new iPhone is supposed to, I mean, that's the key delta they've done.
Yeah.
So it's a question of technology. You mentioned right in the beginning something about tipping point, right? You mentioned about the fact that AI suddenly become very popular. It's always about a tipping point. Actually, the iPhone wasn't the first iteration of the smartphone, either, right? People had tried things before and it hadn't worked because technology reaches a certain tipping points and then it tips.
Understood. No, fantastic. I think this brings me to our last segment. Just this is the this or that round that we call in the in EMBytes. So I'll ask you a series of about 7-8 questions. Quick, rapid fire answers. It's
sure.
Multiple, just 2 choices. So I'll start off with the first one. B2B or B2C?
B2B.
Investing in highly risky or focusing on proven technologies?
Highly risky.
Investing in your area of expertise or exploring unfamiliar territory?
Area of expertise.
Intuition and gut feeling or data-driven decisions?
I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. We honestly do both. To me, early stage especially, intuition is very, very important, right?
Agreed.
It doesn't happen without it. But you must put in place the data to back up your decisioning.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
It's become so much easier to build data to test your hypothesis, your specific hypothesis. That A/B testing. A/B testing literally applies to almost anything today. If you're smart enough, you can come up with an A/B test for anything. So test it. Start with intuition. Build it. So intuition gives you hypothesis. You don't have hypotheses, don't come out of data.
Interesting. Stage-wise, I think it changes. AI or human intelligence?
No AI without human intelligence. Yeah.
All right. Bootstrap or VC funded?
I'd like to say VC funded, and I might be a little biased. I'll give you the reason, at least in my area, right? AI is expensive today, and you need the capital to grow rapidly enough and keep pace with the technology and be as innovative as you can. AI is going to fundamentally transform industries, lives, all of that. Only happens when you build it at scale and you do, and it's going to be hard. It's not an easy journey. So you need probably, in my opinion, venture capital to make that happen.
Would you play the role of a VC or a founder?
Now VC, it's a partly an age thing, but also partly a technology thing. Like if I was to do stuff which I'm good at, which I can do with my own hands, where I know how to build the product end to end, that would not be AI. And I think the AI is the future. So.
Yeah, fair enough. And the last part, scale quickly and potentially burn cash or grow steady while maintaining profitability?
What I care about as a VC is unit economics and capital efficiency.
Understood. That brings us to the end of our podcast and our episode. Thank you so much, Rahul, for taking out the time for having a word with us. I think personally I got to learn a lot. I'm sure the people who are watching also got to learn a lot, and interesting to hear some of your frameworks for how you look at companies, how you look at data, etc. These are all questions that are going to be very pertinent to us in the future. So thank you so much for making yourself available for us, and I had a lovely time. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. Love the questions. Love the rapid fire at the end. Some great questions. So thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And some tough ones in there.
That's the point.
Thanks, Rohan.
Thank you.